Grayson Allen's clearly a valuable player for the Phoenix Suns, but is he valuable to the point that he's untouchable in trade talks? Well, we're talking about it on another edition of Southwest Bias.
Get that stuff out of here. It's Southwest Bias.
Of course, brought to you by Brandon Bills. Elevate your brand like I am right now. With Brandon Bills, the perfect headwear and apparel. Use code PHNX for 20% off your first order. If you're joining me on YouTube, you can see my special guest. If you're listening on audio, of course, let me introduce you to the one, the only host of Locked On Suns, and of course, a contributor at Awful Announcing as well, Brendon Kleen. Brendon, how you doing?
I'm great. I need an ASU hat for the games this month. I'm going to go with games. I'm making it plural, so I'm going to check out Brandon Bills as well. But yeah, let's talk Grayson Allen.
Oh, don't tempt me and talk a little ASU Peach Bowl action, okay? Which, by the way, of course, we do cover right here on PHNX Sports. We appreciate you subscribing. We appreciate you hitting that like button as well. But you mentioned it, Brendon. We were talking about Grayson Allen. And the reason why me and you were talking about this is because earlier this week, I put out a tweet saying I simply fixed the Phoenix Suns with just three trades, right? Jusuf Nurkic, a couple second-round picks for Dorian Finney-Smith, Bradley Beal, and a first for Jimmy Butler, Josh Richardson. And then this one was where you kind of had a problem with it. Grayson Allen straight up for Goga Bitadze. Now, you said that Grayson Allen's value in the context of the Suns gets constantly underrated. So I'm just wondering from your perspective, how important is Grayson Allen to who the Phoenix Suns are right now?
Yeah, I think I said that it was disrespectful. I mean, I was feeling spicy that day.
You're feeling a little spicy. It's okay.
And it wasn't just you. I just think that fans maybe they focus on what he's not great at or how he could be a little bit of a more perfect fit, and maybe that dates back to the DeAndre Ayton trade versus what he actually does and how valuable he actually is. But like let's just start by saying he's not having quite the season that he had last year. So maybe that's where some of that is coming from. But I just look at what I think this team is in its best form, at least right now. And I think Grayson Allen is pretty irreplaceable for them. He's averaging 16 points per 36, very solid for a bench player, 9 threes, most on the team in terms of attempts per 36 minutes. His efficiency is still very good. And especially for a team that this year wants to lean into all of that even more, spacing the floor, jacking up threes, really being that offense-first shootout type of team, Grayson checks all those boxes. And again, emphasizing that I'm talking about what the team looks like right now, and we could be in a very different world by the time the deadline comes around. I look at the types of small ball lineups that I think are this team's best option to win games right now, and he is a huge part of opening things up for the big three, of making the defense pay if they do try to load up on those guys. And frankly, he's just, I think, a better player than a lot of people think on top of that. The defense is, I think, better than people think. His playmaking, his decision-making. He's not amazing at any of those things. He's amazing at being a shooter, but he's just good enough at that stuff where I think he's somebody you can count on in the playoffs. And when you add all that up, that's just not a player I'm going to part with very easily unless what I'm getting back is really going to make my team better.
Yeah, and we'll talk about that value in a second. And I just want to put it out there because I was the one who said that trade and who put that out there. I in no scenario, in no case, am looking for, or actively seeking out to trade Grayson Allen from this team, especially in its current context, especially if it's the only move that the Suns make, right? What I see Grayson Allen, because everything you said was true about his value, about what he brings, I believe that he's completely underrated as far as to how people see him playing, especially because this season he started off a lot slower. He's adjusting to a new role. He's no longer starting alongside the big three. But he does bring so much to the table, especially in the modern NBA, and for a team in Phoenix right now that is top 10 in three-point shooting right now as far as attempts go. He's a massive part of that. My thing is, A, it takes money to make money, and B, I'm not trading Grayson Allen unless it's in the context of multiple moves. And one of those other moves has to be trading Jusuf Nurkic for a wing, whether it's Dorian Finney-Smith or somebody maybe we're not talking about as much. Having a wing of that size, right? Because size is the big thing that comes with Grayson Allen. It does matter when it comes to NBA defense, right? Like, you can't be 6'4", 6'5", and 99% of the time have the same defensive impact as somebody who's 6'7", 6'8", long, 7-foot wingspan, super athletic. Like, those are just kind of the lay of the land. The same way that it's very hard for somebody that build to be as good of a three-point shooter as Grayson Allen is. So it's more about rearranging the chairs rather than saying Grayson Allen has no value. Grayson Allen should be moved from this team. The Suns can't win with Grayson Allen. I think Grayson Allen's the type of player that all 30 teams would want him on their roster, and he would play starter or significant bench minutes for any of those 30 teams. That's a really valuable player, Brendon. So there is a line of, you can't just move him for nothing. But you mentioned, like, hey, it would take a lot of value, right? Is that value in a vacuum where you just need it to be a better player in order to feel comfortable trading Grayson Allen? Or does the context of other trades, maybe getting other wings, shift your opinion as well?
It does, because I mean, as much as I, was feeling spicy with the disrespect point of that tweet, I didn't disagree with your whole layout. I just felt like Goga Bitadze was not a good enough player that it would just be the Suns would be losing that trade. But you had in that package and in your mission to fix the Suns, them getting other wings back, which I would say could make Grayson slightly more disposable. I could see that argument, right? If you had it as Dorian Finney-Smith and Jimmy Butler, and I know you were kind of doing a best case scenario
being
there.
Crazy. You could say it.
Yeah.
I was being crazy.
Exactly. But like, I get the point, right? I would just say, actually look at it a little bit differently, which is that if the Suns are able to go out and add two, even if it's not the caliber of Jimmy, let's just say they get two forwards, two guys bigger, more athletic, longer than Grayson. I actually think that there's a world where that makes Grayson more valuable to this team, because it reinforces that identity that I just mentioned, which is a heavy dose of small ball, an offense first type of team, even if obviously a Finney-Smith or a Jimmy Butler are good defenders as well. 5 out, pace and space, the stuff that wins in the modern NBA. You're getting closer to that if you get those types of players. And I actually still want Grayson around for that type of a team, just as much as I want him on this type of team. There's really no version of a roster where I don't think Grayson Allen is valuable. So that kind of is where I was coming from there. It's not to say there's no center that I would ever trade Grayson Allen for. I think maybe the best way to put the types of centers I might look at in that world would be guys who can still play with a more versatile, switchable, offense-oriented type of team, where Bitadze's not that guy, obviously, right now. Nurkic, not that guy. Oso Ighodaro, maybe we're getting a little closer. Can you find players in that mold? I like Robert Williams. Maybe we could have a conversation there, but I just, again, come back to, it's hard for me to envision a world where I'm saying no thanks to Grayson Allen, separate from a huge upgrade.
It's hard, especially in the position that the Suns are in as well, where you're not feeling comfortable right now if you are the Phoenix Suns. In fact, you're basically feeling the exact opposite of comfortable, where not only is there Jimmy Butler trade rumors, but there's something clearly missing from your team. Maybe it's continuity and chemistry. Maybe it's the big three need to play more games together, right? Like, that's going to always be a conversation with those three players on there. Maybe it's an identity thing, right? Maybe you need to lean a little bit more into defense. It's hard because there's so much going on with the Phoenix Suns that it just feels like a trade is inevitable. It feels like if it's not Grayson Allen, it's gonna be something. And for the record, you said you're interested in Robert Williams. Grayson Allen for Robert Williams does work straight up the same way that Goga for Grayson works straight up. Is that something that you would pull the trigger on? Let's say, and if it's not, would it maybe take a second round draft pick or something to do that?
Yeah, there's just this is the thing you come up against with, frankly, everybody, and I would even include Jimmy Butler. The Suns are very, very restricted in terms of what they can get. And so that means that almost every iteration of a trade is going to feel a little bit imperfect. And so with Robert Williams, I think he fits stylistically. I think he plugs a lot of the holes that the Suns have. He's a very good offensive rebounder, if not always an amazing defensive rebounder. He is an amazing finisher. He can switch on defense. He's a good rim protector. He fits better in the modern NBA than, a Jusuf Nurkic does. But the elephant in the room, he gets hurt all the time. So are you going to give up one of your key players and take somebody like that back in? Robert Williams is getting me closer. I would even say a guy that you had on your, recipe, Dorian Finney-Smith. I might do that straight up.
Really? Okay.
And that might feel a little bit, if that's what you had to do. Like you had it as Nurk. I'm not so sure the Nets take Nurk. So maybe if that's a no-go, but he's the best you can really get and you focus your efforts on Dorian Finney-Smith, I might do that. Again, all these moves are dependent on one another, but my end goal is reinforcing the identity of this team and trying to maximize what I think their kind of destiny is and going from there.
A couple more questions I'll have for Brendon, of course, host of Locked On Suns, contributor over at Awful Announcing. You can follow him at Brendon Kleen 14 on social media as well. But I do want to remind everybody this edition of Southwest Bias is brought to you by Branded Bills. You mentioned Brendon sharing his envy about not having a Branded Bills ASU hat. Well, I'll tell you what, you come out to our watch party for the Peach Bowl on January 1st at Gila River Resorts and Casinos Wild Horse Pass. We're going to be giving out some Branded Bills. You can enter your name to win a beautiful, sleek Branded Bills hat. It's the perfect headwear and apparel. They have snapback, truckers, fitted beanies, and tees. Plus, they have custom logos as well. Right now, I rock my hats backwards, but I rock the ASU one today. If you saw me yesterday, I was rocking the PHNX one because we have our own special branded Bills hats, and you can do that for your business as well. Branded Bills has partnerships with fantastic Big 12 champion schools like Arizona State University, and they do charity work with lowly schools like the University of Arizona, just out of the kindness of their heart. And that's because they're a local company out of Mesa, Arizona. And you can get some money off your first order. Head to brandonbills.com. Use code PHNX for 20% off your first order just for listening to Southwest Buys. You can also save some money over with our friends over at Empire Today. And Empire Today, they're not going to come out here and tell you that they're going to guarantee you the lowest pricing on your floors. Because quite frankly, if they were doing that, they'd be looking you in the eyes and promising you that they would put flooring in your home that they wouldn't put in theirs. And one thing you do not want to do when it comes to remodeling your home, your apartment, your business, whatever it might be, is cheap out. You don't want to make the wrong decision, and you don't want to make a decision that you regret either immediately or a year later when that flooring starts to come up, wear down, whatever happens in between, because you don't think about it, but you use your flooring quite a bit. We have Empire Today flooring out in Studio A. It gets beat up all the time. We have set changes, chairs moving around, everything, and it's held up beautifully. It was easy, it was quick, it was convenient, and they can be in your home for a free in-home estimate same day. Also, they have a virtual floor visualizer where you can see exactly how the floors would look in your home, and they might not guarantee you the lowest price, but they'll get you some money off just for listening to Southwest Bias. Schedule a free in-home estimate today. All listeners of Southwest Bias can receive a $350 off discount when they use promo code PHNX. Restrictions do apply. See EmpireToday.com/PHNX for details. You mentioned small ball. And you mentioned leaning into an offensive identity. If they don't move Grayson Allen, and let's say they don't make any other trades, Brendon, are you maybe advocating towards more Grayson on the court, more Katie at the 5, and a little bit less Jusuf Nurkic?
Yeah, I think if they can't either upgrade off of Nurkic or maybe just, get rid of him for another one of the types of players we're talking about, more in that 3-and-D forward type of mold, then the reality might just be the best plan is to limit his minutes and just, marginalize him on this team because, they're already kind of doing that, but you got to make some kind of adjustment when your fifth starter, your starting center, is making your team worse most of the time when he's on the court. And so far, that has just been the reality of the situation. So, yeah. I've said all season the Suns' best lineup is the same one that I would have told you was their best lineup on April 1st of 2024 heading into the playoffs, which is the big three, Allen and O'Neal. I still think that. You can throw a Tyus Jones at me. You can throw even a Ryan Dunn at me or any of the three centers that you might like. I still think that I just want to put the 5 best players on the court. Yes, they're small. Yes, the defense might not cut it, but I guess that kind of is exactly why we're having the conversation we are, which is if you want to have a better 5-man unit than that, you got to get to work. Because right now, I still think it's that.
And I think it's interesting because you're in a situation where if you don't make trades, if you don't make moves, which does feel a little bit unlikely, you feel like they're going to do something around the margins. But let's say they don't. You still have a lot of problems to figure out. And Grayson Allen does feel like he can be a solution. And part of that could just be the fact that if you look at his season averages right now, that of course takes into account the beginning of the season where he's adjusting to a new role in his personal life as far as being a father, and then on the court as far as being moved to the bench from being a very key fifth starter for Phoenix last year. A new system and Mike Budenholzer, which, sure, he's played for him before, but it's different when you play with a different set of players in a different city and a different goal. So
coming in, can we just say way too big? He's already slimmed down from when he was showing off the guns early in the season. That was not what he should have done, and I think he realized that, and he's back to normal too on the physical side. We
were both there on media day, and him trying to walk back his comments about like how much weight he's gained. I was like, brother, I have eyes. Like, I'm not trying to call you a liar, but like to say you're the same weight that you were last year, it's like I watched you last year, and it's just not true.
They videotape all the games. I don't know if they told you that. Yeah,
there's proof. In case you didn't know, people have their eyes on you. But yeah, it feels like he needed some time to adjust into this system to get his body right. And when he has his deep threes, his ability to space the floor, he might have limitations as far as size defensively, but when it comes to IQ and when it comes to effort, I would put him up there as one of the top on this team as far as consistent effort on that end as well. And the only problem with that is sometimes in the playoffs, effort isn't enough. Right. But you're getting to the point where if you're in the playoffs and you're losing and you're not getting to your goal, I don't feel like you're going to look back and say it was Grayson Allen's fault. Maybe the role that he filled, maybe the role that he didn't fill helped contribute to it. But at the end of the day, Grayson Allen's an auxiliary piece. And that's the good and that's the bad. It's the good as in he's a fantastic shooter. If you can get the most out of him, he's going to raise your floor, he's going to raise your ceiling, right? But it's also bad because those auxiliary pieces are the ones that are usually in the trade talks, and you do not have a more valuable chip right now than Grayson Allen. So my final concluding thoughts on all of this is Grayson Allen should absolutely not be untouchable in trade talks, but I do not want Grayson Allen to be the sole player traded from the Phoenix Suns. I want there to be a conjuncture of moves. I want it to be an addition, and it needs to be to fill a hole, to be able to be in the playoffs and say, Grayson left us needing some of this, and that is why we moved him. Right? Because you can probably replicate some sort of offense like what Grayson Allen can bring with the likes of Kevin Durant, Bradley Beal if he's there, Devin Booker, Tyus Jones, Royce O'Neal, right? If whoever you're trading for in a combination of moves, that all lines up to me. But you can't just trade him for trading's sake because, like you've mentioned so many times, he brings immense value to this organization.
I guess the way I would put it right is the league is filled with guys like this at the top on the best teams, guys like Grayson Allen. Yeah. The only way I think what you said of the sequence of moves is a great element of it. The other thing, just from an individual player standpoint, is if you could tell me that I'm getting a player who is going to be enough of an upgrade on the defensive end without being too much of a knock on the offense, that's what's going to get it done. That's why Dorian Finney-Smith stands out to me. I just can't do it for a center. That's kind of okay. I honestly, if I looked at what you had put out there as your fix, and I knew I was getting Finney-Smith and Butler, I would just say leave it. Keep Nurk or I guess Nurk's going to Brooklyn. Start Plumlee. I don't care. Like I'm just kind of leaving it there at that point because I did everything I needed to do. I'm keeping Grayson, and I'm just rolling with that team for now. I guess maybe don't mess too much with the good thing if you can nail the other stuff along the way.
I mean, I think that makes sense. And either way, I would be fascinated. I am intrigued to see this team if they were able to get a player like Goga, despite some of his limitations, some of the things he does besides Nurk would be interesting. However, your scenario where you keep Grayson with an addition of athletic, long, defensive-oriented wings who can still contribute in certain offensive areas, that's fascinating as well. I think at the end of the day, maybe maybe you'll agree with me, Brendon. We're just gonna have to wait and see. You're gonna have to give it some time, see what happens. The NBA is changing every single game, every single day, but of course there are multiple places that you can keep up. We love the Suns community, of course, Brendon, a massive part of that. You can of course catch Locked On Phoenix Suns 5 days out of the week, as he is a co-host over there. Of course, also a staff writer and host over at Awful Announcing. If you want to keep up with everything that he is doing, a great place to follow him on social at Brendon Kleen 14. That's BRENDON KLEEN 14. As somebody who has to spell his name, I got you, man. You can follow me at ERIKRUBY. Of course, catch me on PHNX Suns 5 days a week, PHNX Sun Devils 5 days a week, and of course, right here on Southwest Bias twice a week as well, which means this was episode number 2. So that means we'll see you all next week. Thanks for joining us.
Get that stuff out of here. It's Southwest Bias.
We all silly like the mayor.